far as irrigation is concerned, this is the rule of thumb that I like to give everybody, is that your irrigation system is a safety net to keep your lawn out of drought stress. That's the purpose of it. It's not a crutch to prop your lawn up, but it is a safety net to keep it out of drought stress. So the best way to water, if you have the time and you want to take the effort to do this, the best way to water your lawn is to just let it get the rain that it gets, and then in between rain events, when you see the lawn start to get drought stress, turn on your irrigation system and give it enough water to get it through that period until we get more rain. Okay, now I understand a lot of us don't have the time or energy to do that, and we get busy and we can't walk around the yard and check it out every few days, make sure it's doing okay. But the rule of thumb is that the less water you give the lawn, or let me rephrase that. The more you space out your irrigation water events, the deeper root system you're going to have, because as the lawn begins to dry out, the grass is going to start to hunt for water and grow deeper roots to pull that water out of the ground. So the best thing to do is, if you want to take your irrigation and set it and forget it, then during the summer, usually every other day or every third day is a good frequency to set the irrigation system for. During the winter, it doesn't need any. Normally we tell people to turn the irrigation system off in November and don't turn it back on again until March. During that time you can drain the pump so that you don't have the possibility of the pump freezing, cracking, and you have to replace the pump. It's better to put down more water less often than less water more often. So if you have your irrigation system set, it's better to put down, say, 45 minutes of water per zone every 2 or 3 days than it is to put down 15 minutes of water every single day. And really never should you water it more than once a day unless it's brand new sod. That would be the only exception. If you leave the top ½ inch of the soil moist all the time, that's where the roots are going to stay. But once that top ½ inch or so starts to dry out, then again, like I say, the roots are going to start growing deeper, and you're going to end up with a stronger root system, which overall will give you a healthier lawn. As far as the time of day to water, the best time of day to put water on your lawn is in the early morning hours when the dew is still on the ground. The reason for this is you don't want to extend the number of hours during the day that the grass is wet, which creates a favorable environment for fungus to develop in the yard. The other reason is if you water during the day, you get a lot of evaporation from the sunlight, and it's windier. You don't get the distribution of the water is not as good. So I normally recommend like between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., 8 a.m. is the time window that it's good to set the sprinkler timer for. Okay? Any questions about irrigation?
Finished by 8?
Yeah, finish by 8. Finish up by 8 because usually that's about the time of day that the dew will start to burn off the grass. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about post-emergent weed control here for a little bit. We've already talked about pre-emergent weed control, how you should be putting on pre-emergent weed control right now on the lawn. And it's best to break it up between putting half an application on right now and half an application on later on. I had a question during the break that, why doesn't pre-emergent weed control work sometimes? And pre-emergent weed control will work on weeds that propagate by weed seeds But the key is if you're going to use it, you need to read the directions very carefully and make sure that you put it out according to the directions as far as the number of pounds per square feet of the product that's recommended to control the weeds. I mean, they formulate these products very precisely, and if you don't use them the way they have prescribed you to use them, it's just like taking medicine. You know, if you only take half the amount of antibiotic that you're supposed to take, it's not going to work. Same thing with the pre-emergent weed control. If you only put down half the amount that they recommend, then it's not going to work. If you put down more than they recommend, it's probably going to damage your grass. So you need to make sure that you know exactly how much that you need to put down and put down that prescribed amount. Last week I was talking to somebody about this. Actually, they were Facebooking me about it. They had been to the Holly by the Sea presentation I did a couple weeks ago, and they wanted to know about, you know, they said they got some of the prodiamine, and they had a spreader and it had different numbers on it. How should they set the spreader to put it out? And really, I couldn't help them with that. But what I told them is if you can determine how big your yard is, how many, within a reasonable, amount of accuracy, how many thousand square feet you have. You don't have to be exactly right, but pretty close. And then determine how many pounds, total pounds of product you need to put out. Say if you figure you're going to need 50 pounds of product, then take the fertilizer spreader, set it on a low setting, and just go back and forth over the yard several times until you get it all put out. That's one of the easiest ways to put it out. You'll get it out, you'll get it put out fairly accurately. Don't try and put it out all in one application. And by the way, while I'm talking about that if you're going to fertilize your yard, that's the best way to fertilize your yard, to get an even distribution of fertilizer. Every spring, you can drive around the neighborhoods and you can see people's front yards that look like ball fields. They're striped. They're green, light green, dark green, light green, and that's what they've done is they've taken the fertilizer spreader and went up like this, turned around, and went back and forth, and they didn't overlap the fertilizer, so you can see exactly where the fertilizer landed and where it didn't land. So the best way to put out fertilizer with the fertilizer spreader, first of all, the best kind of fertilizer there's two different kinds of fertilizer spreaders out there. There's a drop spreader that drops the fertilizer straight down. It's kind of a rectangular looking hopper, and as you go in, as you go over the yard, it drops the fertilizer straight down. Then there's a broadcast spreader that has a little wheel underneath of it, and the fertilizer falls on the wheel, and the wheel just flings it out like that. That's the best kind of fertilizer spreader to use because it makes a more even distribution, and it's just easier to get the overlap. And then when you use that broadcast spreader, the best way to go over your lawn is in a checkerboard pattern. So if you have a front lawn, go back and forth one way, and then go back and forth the other way like this, and that way you covered everything. Don't try to put it out all at one time. And this is especially important if you're using weed and feed, because so many times I'll see people, where instead of having green, dark green, light green, dark green, light green, they'll have dark green, or they'll have light green dead, where they've taken the weed and feed and put it down and just overdosed it, and instead of feeding the grass and killing the weeds, they just killed everything because it just wasn't put out evenly.